it's a really emotional evening, I think, for a lot of people watching on. Obviously, none more so than Andy Murray. We saw the tears as he was given that final round of applause from everyone on the Suzanne Lenglen court, and even Daniel Evans, his teammate, couldn't hold back the tears on what has not been the story we hoped was going to be written, but it is a chapter that is closing for Andy Murray. And Alex Danson-Bennett is alongside me here in the studio, 2016 gold medal winner of the Rio Olympics with the Great Britain hockey team. And a number of times I've seen that bottom lip come out from you. I know you've been championing him, and so many as well. It wasn't the best performance in the end, unfortunately. We didn't get that comeback that we had seen in the first two matches that Murray and Evans were involved in. But wow, what a career that Andy Murray has had, and what an inspiration as well.
I mean, what a career. And I don't imagine there is a dry eye for anybody tuning in to watch tonight. He will go down as one of the greatest sports people we have ever seen. He's brought so much to the game, so much to our country. The passion he plays with, I would have loved to see the fairy tale ending tonight, and it's not to be. But you can still see the emotion on him. I think the interview that he did after Wimbledon, for me, will be one of the most informing, brilliant interviews I've ever heard. He's going to find this really tough. Day in, day out, he's got up for as long as he can remember with one thing in mind: to be better at tennis. So as he draws a close on his career, I, along with every other person tuning in, I imagine would want to wish him best. He's been a legend. He's given us so much joy, so many memories. Sir Andy Murray, you have been another GOAT.
Yeah, a few GOAT performances tonight when you bring in Simone Biles and what she has done in the gymnastics this evening. But Joe Shennan, as I mentioned, was brilliantly calling the shots at Roland Garros for us, and he's back with us to sort of talk over what has been a wonderful, fantastic career for Andy Murray. And Joe, one of obviously the most poignant moments for Andy and British tennis was when he became that first British male to win Wimbledon since 1936, when he did it in 2013. I mean, it was a long wait, but wow, did we enjoy that moment.
Well, Andy Murray has led the way in British tennis, I have to say, more than any other player in the history of the sport in this country. As you say, it was that dramatic long wait to win Wimbledon in 2013, followed it up in 2016. He won the US Open in 2012. Had Andy Murray not been in competition for almost all of his career with the likes of Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal and Novak Djokovic, I think he may have added 3, 4, 5, maybe more Grand Slams to the list. I mean, he was a finalist at the Australian Open on 5 occasions, a French Open finalist as well. But this is somebody who I think, as I say, has done more than anybody just about on and off court to take British tennis and British sport forward. I think, as I say, his impact transcends the sport of tennis. He's one of the most impactful sports people that I think we've seen across the course of this country's history. I can't quite believe that the journey has come to an end. But what I think is even more remarkable about Andy Murray, Natalie, is that he's been written off on so many occasions. He's had to have surgery numerous times. The mental fortitude that you have to show to be able to come through something like that, something as physically demanding as professional tennis in the way that Andy Murray has, I just think is absolutely remarkable. And it's one of those very emotional situations for Team Murray, but I think for everybody involved across the whole of the tennis world. I think it'll impact everybody, Murray's exit from tennis, in the same way that Roger Federer's exit has done, and similarly for Djokovic and Nadal when they eventually hang up the racket.
Yeah, I mean, you're so right to point out the generation that he has been a part of, because I agree with you completely that he no doubt would have won more majors had he not been in such a competitive field of Federer, of Nadal, of Djokovic, and those cruel injuries as well. And I mean, I remember the Australian Open a few years ago when they did a big farewell for Andy Murray, and yet he hadn't confirmed at that point he was definitely retiring, but so it seemed very premature. And obviously he did try to come back, and we have seen him play tournaments since. It's been an absolutely wonderful, remarkable journey that we have all been on from a British tennis perspective for Andy Murray. And something we spoke about earlier on, Joe, as well, is that not only is he one of the best on court, it's also what he was doing off the court as well. There's no one better, especially in tennis, who was such an advocate for equality.
Absolutely. He really has led the way on that score. He's a very dignified figure, Andy Murray. And when he speaks, I think people sit up, they listen, and they take note. I think he's always been very measured in everything that he's done. I think he's been a great champion of other tennis players, people involved in other sports, as well as his on-court heroics. You know, I think he's somebody that everybody in British sport ought to take heed, ought to take lesson from. And I think he's somebody to be very proud of. And as I say, it may be over for him on the court as a professional player, but the legacy of somebody like Andy Murray goes on for far longer than his actual career. It'll reverberate for decades to come. And the fact that he's managed to eke out as much of his body as he's been able to, Andy Murray. You know, he had back surgery in 2013. He's had 2 hip surgeries. He's had injury problems this year. You know, nobody thought at one stage that he'd be able to play at the Olympic Games. And I think, of course, everybody would have loved it to end with a medal. Everybody would have loved it, ideally, to end with a 3rd gold medal in Olympic competition for Andy Murray. Ultimately, it wasn't to be. But I think participating in an event like this, participating at the Paris Games, given he couldn't play at Wimbledon over the course of this summer, it is a pretty fitting way to go out. And alongside a good friend of his in Dan Evans, who has to take great credit as well.
As do you, Joe, because as I mentioned, you were fantastic this evening. So plaudits to you too. Thank you, Joe. Great to have Joe Shennan alongside us, who was calling the shots at Roland Garros. And what's now an emotional evening as Andy Murray's tennis career comes to an end. We will continue to reflect on that, plus, of course, bring you more from the pool. This is Olympic Kickoff.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.